Welcome to Inspiration Contagion, where we spread inspiration one story at a time. I am your host, Holly Jean Jackson. Each interview spotlights transformational business leaders, their stories, challenges, and advice for how you too can lead yourself and others through inspiration. Learn how you too can achieve peak performance, build more revenue, and lead the legacy you were meant to lead. Welcome to episode 86 of Inspiration Contagion. This week, my guest is Charis Santillie. She is a life balance and transition coach and the host of Charis Your Life podcast. She's also a speaker, a certified fearless living coach, a certified fearless trainer, and positive intelligence trainer, and has been an entrepreneur for over 20 years. She now helps entrepreneurs go from busy to balanced and beyond. I don't know about you guys, but man, we all could use a little bit of Charis magic. So welcome, Charis.
Thanks, Holly. Happy to be here.
Yeah, amazing. It's so great to have you here. I've known Charis for a little while at this point, so this is going to be a really fun conversation. I hope you guys are tuned in, tapped in, and ready for some inspiration. So we're going to start off. I want to hear what makes you an inspirational leader, or what's your secret sauce?
I I think that for me, it's about a lot of people tell me that I calm them. So considering what I do as a coach and the types of topics that I cover with them, how deep we get, that's a really great trait to have. So that is what I consider to be one of my superpowers. But another thing that plays into the secret sauce and the inspiration is that I teach through telling stories. So especially through my podcast and public facing things, but even in group programs and even occasionally too in privates, that I'll weave that in there if I feel it's going to help get a point across. And it can be through my stories, because I've got plenty, and my own experiences. And that can inspire people. And then it can also be through other things I see in the world that I'm struck to share, because just a story I hear about a certain individual and something they accomplished, and I'm like, wow, I want to spread that and share my take on it. And people really appreciate that and find that to be inspiring. So another thing that's interesting about inspiration, I think I've heard, and I'm sure you know this more than I do, that the root of the word is like something related to in spirit. Isn't there something around that? You're nodding your head.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
In
Yeah.
spirit, also like inhaling. I've heard lots of different guests. They come in with like the definition of it and then they relate to themselves to that definition. But yeah, in spirit, inspiring, like inhaling, a lot of those things.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful. I think I don't remember. I think that's in connection with a Latin root of inspirato or inspire something. Anyway, I think that that's really cool because of what I think that means, of bringing out something in someone, from my spirit to theirs, or whatever people want to call it if they're not comfortable with that word. But yeah, I'd say
Yeah.
those are a few of my things.
Yeah, I love that. And we could certainly use more calm in this crazy, crazy world out there. Today alone, since we were talking about story as a superpower, my goodness, I've talked to at least 5 people today that have had crazy drama things happen. So there must be something in the air or in spirit affecting us as beings and souls and humans right now. So being able to calm folks is certainly an amazing superpower. So I'm grateful that you have that as an inspirational leader and part of your secret sauce. And stories definitely connect. Stories are super powerful. And when I first met Charis, she shared her famous story, which I'm going to give her the opportunity to share right after this. And that's really what stuck for me, is that she walks the talk of what she teaches because of her story, because of what happened. And that's why stories are so powerful, because we remember them, we can see ourselves in them. But then also we can see that, we used to do life one way, and then something pivotal happens and we have the choice to choose differently. So, Charis, before we dive into the next question, I'd love for you to share, briefly your story about that pivotal turning point and why you kicked off this business that you have now.
Yeah, thanks so much. So, um, I grew up in a family where my parents were entrepreneurs and like went after the American dream and attained it. And so they started a business in our kitchen. It was like seriously part of the family. And I got to see that from the ground up and grow into multi-million-dollar business and 30 to 40 employees. It was quite a ride. Um, I modeled after them and became a high achiever very quickly. Went after and got all the accolades in high school, and then went off to college and came back. Summer I turned 19, we celebrated my dad's 50th birthday, and we went for a hot air balloon ride. And it was a beautiful ride, but something went wrong when we came into land, and we had the basket bounce on a few attempted landings. And you can't really quote unquote fly these things or pilot them. There's not true control that you have. So what ended up happening with us is one of the times we hit the ground, my father rolled out, and he then his foot got caught on a cord. He was drug about the length of a football field through farm fields. He was suspended in the air upside down, hanging for a while. I saw that from up in the air, looking down at him at that point. And that ended up breaking his neck and making him paralyzed. At some point, when we got to the ground and ran over to him and saw he was conscious, he was still alive, but he was not moving. He saw me in complete hysterics, and he looked up at me and said, "You should see the other guy." So he was able to crack a joke because he wanted to take care of his little girl. And he was physically paralyzed. But I look at each of us that were involved, and we were emotionally paralyzed, the rest of us. And if we look at my mom and I in particular, my mom went to alcohol to cope, and that ultimately ended up taking her life. It'll be 10 years this coming Thanksgiving since her liver finally gave out from that being her coping mechanism. And then my mechanism for coping was to become ultra busy. Like I already was ambitious, but let's just amp it up more, stay super busy. Let's find my own addiction inside of workaholic, and see how that goes for a few decades. Ultimately, that caught up with me physically and emotionally. And I ended up serendipitously meeting a life coach at a business event at the time that I think I was truly ready, ready for the teacher to appear type of moment. And then that was 11 years ago. I did a lot of personal work with her and through various of her programs and one-on-one and other things I've explored the last 11 years, and really came to a point where I'm still doing the work. I'm going to be doing the work until I die. And then I personally think we still do some work beyond, but that's a whole nother topic. But that obviously inspired me. Talk about inspiration. That whole experience and my experience in personal development and learning how to take care of myself better, actually feel some feelings I'd been stuffing, uh, that inspired me to become a coach. So here I am helping others who are having similar experiences to me, maybe not necessarily the big traumatic event that I had, but staying busy to avoid feeling their feelings, and they're ready to make some shifts regarding that. That's part of one of my key niches that I work with, and that's how I got here.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of power in that story too, because it doesn't have to take something extreme like what she just shared she experienced with her family. It can be small things that we aren't ready to face where we just throw ourselves into some sort of addiction, whether it's shopping or work or busyness or alcohol. And the truth is that the more we avoid those, they eventually catch up with us. in my story of the bear, which most of my listeners have heard, you can't outrun the bear. So stop trying. So just face that thing head on. So that's incredibly inspirational that you were able to figure that out. It's sad that it takes some of us, either we never figure it out or it takes decades, but it is definitely work you're doing for life. My nickname is Jetpack. I'm also a recovering workaholic, a recovering perfectionist,
Yep.
a recovering addict of doing too much in pretty much every part of my life. And it is an ongoing balancing recovery act that I will continue to do beyond this lifetime in future reincarnations because that's just who I am. So I hear you loud and clear, and have a feeling a lot of our listeners are probably pretty similar. Um, but we're going to now switch a pace a little bit here. I want to talk about peak performance because that story really dialed in the inspirational piece. But I want to hear, now that you've moved through that, you're in a different part of life. How do you now define peak performance, and how did you arrive at this definition?
Yeah, I think it's the key word there is now, because if you'd asked me 15, 20 years ago, it would be a very different story. So now, like when I hear the typical peak performance, to be honest, I kind of like, it's a little bit of a turnoff for me because of the typical, I think, society's view of that, and like want to be in it in at least the way it's been presented to me in a lot of over time. It seems to be equated with the hustle culture and the grind and some of the stuff that I've been working to escape. But I like the idea of redefining it. It kind of falls in a category of words and concepts like success, where again, they're in themselves, they're not bad. And even if we probably look at the actual key definitions, they're probably not what we've made them to be in a culture or society. So I love that we can have the opportunity to have a discussion to basically redefine them. And in this case, peak performance for me is considering my whole system performing, not just my mind and my brain, but body, mind, heart, soul, spirit, whatever you want to refer to that, all of that being in alignment. Like when I talk about life balance, I'm actually talking about inner balance. Sometimes things in our external life need to or may change to have us feel more balanced, and sometimes they may not, because really balance is about how we feel more than managing our time. That's what I feel, and it's more about managing our feelings. So practicing coming into this alignment of those, all of our whole system, body, mind, heart, spirit, all of it, the more we can be in alignment or notice when one of them's a little out of alignment and then figure out how to bring it back on board, um, throughout our day, and then just keep doing it again, keep recognizing it, because we're never going to be in perfect alignment all the time. And I too am a recovering perfectionist. So it is the constant reminder to part of my brain that is still a little stuck at that at times. Just be like, no, no, no. Remember, we've worked on this. Where that's unattainable, and that leads to all sorts of physical and mental problems. So we're not going to go there, and let's stay over here, and let's just get everything back into this alignment. So that's what I think is connected with peak performance, and along with that is trusting myself and true self-trust. Like again, if you asked me this 20 years ago and did I trust myself, I probably would have said, oh yes, of course. And was I confident of? Yes, of course. And did people think yes. Was I a peak performer? Yes. I mean, but not in the way that I look at now, and not what I think actually really matters now, because it's just so much has changed for me in this last decade. Thank goodness. Really grateful about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that redefining peak performance. And I've had a couple guests that have come on and said something similar where they're like, I don't even like that term. And I'm like, well, great. So let's define it in a way that you do like. And my definition is similar. It's looking at the health, clarity, and the business. It's the whole structure, the whole being, mind, body, and soul. And for those of you that don't like that, I'm sorry, but that's the way we look at things on this show. And it's making sure that they are aligned. And when you're not feeling aligned, as you shared, it's knowing and understanding for you, which is unique to each of us individually, how you know it's off balance. For example, I'm having a week where I am not in full alignment. How do I know that? My mental chatter is off the rails and doing weird things that are from very old stories that are no I know are not true. Part of that's from an injection of steroids for something that I needed physically. I've tried healing it naturally, it didn't work, and having a systemic response to that. So then it triggers your anxiety. So it's also understanding that when you have external things that are good for you and they affect you and they bring stuff up, it's about having grace with yourself and being patient, figuring out what you need to support yourself to getting back to balance, and understanding you're never going to always be at peak performance and in balance because that's life. And it doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. So 100% agree that we need to redefine peak performance. It's very unique to each of us. I say pretty frequently these days that I'm overcoming social and religious trauma, because it's true, and because each of us really needs to define for ourselves success, peak performance, our belief systems on our own terms instead of trying to compare and despair against others. But I digress. So, Charis, I want to ask you, along this crazy journey to this new definition of peak performance and where you are today, what were some of the challenges and obstacles that you faced along the way?
I think, well, in recent years, I've come to understand more about the brain and neuroscience and what's physically going on and how we're set up in our bodies. And so now I can look back and understand more. So I would say one of the biggest challenges was breaking through the patterned behaviors. And I was doing a webinar this morning, and in that I was talking about um, how we've got the neural pathways that are like so ingrained, so patterned that they're like a superhighway for us. Like they're easy to get on, they're smooth sailing, they're maintained, they're clean, they're wide, there's plenty of room. And so we can just go zooming down those. And basically, all of our life in any moment in time that is part of our comfort zone, not necessarily comfortable things we like, but essentially is part of this like network of superhighways that is just so easy to go on because our brain is just so used to it. And so now I look back and I'm like, okay, no wonder it was so hard to break off of that, because to then change a pattern, change a belief, change an action, I have to get off the freaking smooth sailing, speedy, easy superhighway. And some people will say, like, I've heard the phrase like carve a goat trail or the deer trail, you kind of starting like that. But I have a movie reference of a scene that comes to mind for me, which is anybody my age or older will remember this from the 80s, Romancing the Stone. Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner, and Jack is got his machete. It's pouring storm. They're in the jungle. They have no path. They are lost, literally surrounded by wilderness and huge jungle things that like are practically eating them up, and he's slashing his way to carve a path through the jungle. And I think that that is the perfect scene for describing some of those moments and why it felt so hard, or why it was so hard if I look back, to change some of the behaviors, because we if it's new, it really is new and it's scary, and then we literally have a part of our brain that's not evolved like in over like hundreds of years. It still thinks. I know you had literally had an experience with a bear chasing you, but we have, each of us have a part of our brain that literally thinks that like the scary email or the scary, all the things that are not truly uh, going to endanger our lives are like bears constantly. And that is a bummer to realize and learn. But the
Mm-hmm.
more I understand that, more I can give myself a break. I think that was the biggest challenge, was overcoming our natural way of being with our bodies and how the brain works.
Yeah, the negativity bias thing is really empowering to know and understand, but still very difficult for all humans to work with. So if you're listening to this, you're not alone. It is very easy. And as you just alluded to, having a phone call or a text. Before we hopped on this, I had a difficult series of text messages from somebody, and I literally had to remind myself, hey, your brain is freaking out. It's actually learning this, fight or flight response. And I had to do some breath work to get my parasympathetic system to calm down and be like, it's fine, it's all good. But even the more you know this and you have the tools to work with it, it doesn't mean your brain doesn't start doing the same darn things. Just like when you're in traffic and you have a close call, or somebody gives you the finger on the road, you need to kind of do straw breathing, have those long exhales, because you start naturally going into that protective survival mode, even for things that are not actually threatening your life. So the more you learn to work with that, the more you'll be a happy human and not let things kind of derail your entire day. So I did want to ask you too, beyond those challenges, how have you started to create a culture of peak performance in your work and in your company?
So, I encourage communication and everybody getting their needs met and speaking up if, like, I have an assistant, and if his plate is getting too full, I want him to communicate with me and let me know that so that I can help reprioritize. Because I don't want to push him into a overworking, overdoing zone when I'm not sitting there next to him every day to know if he's reached his capacity or if something took longer than I expected or some other things came up that I didn't realize and they're taking time. And so, I encourage that everything needs to, like, let's get in alignment. And if you're starting to feel out of sorts or frenzied or can't figure something out and kind of frozen in something, like, speak up and talk to me, because I'm happy to help and we'll figure something out. And I don't even mind if I need to help literally do something or take something back or take something off the plate or put something off or delete it or whatever we've got to do. I want us to function where we don't take anything too seriously, and yet respect and go for our deadlines and our goals. But I think that's important too when I look at things with the business. So for instance, uh, if I'll notice that response that you were just describing to a little bit, or I have in the past, and I've caught myself, and I, like, there would be some things I would get kind of riled up about. And I'm like, why am I so so what if it gets posted a couple hours later than I'd intended? Like like a podcast episode, for instance, one day or something. It's like I don't think I'm going to lose everybody just because that happened. And I this is not the end of the world. Like, just relaxing into and reminding myself and getting again the things back in alignment, because the mind in that example went way off the rails and created some story that's a bunch of hoo-ha, because it's not like, so what, the email normally goes out at a certain time and we had a delay or a mixed communication, and then it goes out a couple hours later. I mean, yeah. Oh well. So the I try to remind myself when I'm operating on things for the business, and then team members to, let's support each other. Let's, like, remember we're not, like, doing surgery here, and it's going to be okay.
I'm laughing because I was literally thinking, unless you're, a surgical team, then it's a
Mhm.
little different because lives are in your hands. But
Yes.
I was also giggling because I wanted to almost sarcastically say, Charis, if you don't release your podcast on time, it ruins my entire day, week, and month.
Right.
I mean, like, literally, I am holding my breath until that thing drops. But I'm making a point here. I'm trying to be sarcastic and like very extreme here, because that's how extreme our brains are with negativity bias. And it's absurd. And so it is about having grace with your team and walking the talk of what you present to your clients with your employees so that everybody is equally supported. So I love that you're doing that.
By the
Um,
way,
yeah.
quick interruption. You mentioned the word grace, I think 2 times now, so now I have to say it. That's a definition of my name, Charis.
Oh, love it. How
Yeah, it's Greek.
perfect.
It's a Greek name, and technically it's pronounced totally differently, but I won't say that and confuse anybody. Yeah, so just as a little random side note.
There you go. It's part of the serendipity of our episode today.
Yep.
Yeah, so I wanted to also get into a bit of how have you taken these bits of peak performance and how you are defining success today for your team and applied that to optimizing your customer experience.
So I think it's um, part of the peak performance for me is into, and I agree wholeheartedly with what you said too earlier, that it's different for each of us. So like for me to feel in peak performance, I have a phrase of, instead of go for it, which is like the chasing, go, 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 rah, 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 which it's not bad, but it's not the way I want to live now. I've swapped the words out and I say flow for it. And I have that as my screensaver. So I like the concept of being in the flow and flowing for something and letting myself like trust the rhythms of everything around me, the universe, like whatever I'm in, who I'm interacting with, and my own rhythms. Like for me, feeling a little off today, but I could tell you one of the cycles of my month and point to part of that. That's in this, section of the river for me today and where I'm flowing in my life. And so just understanding all that is key. And being in peak performance in, now I forgot the first question. I got all of my
For your
sidetracked.
customer experience, how do
Customer,
you
yes.
apply that
Thank
to
you.
customers?
So being able to, so part of mine is having a lot of things automated and systemized. It makes me feel balanced and happy and just calm. And so anything that brings me peace of mind, I will integrate into my life and into my business. So certain customer communications and customer things and records and whatnot, I've got certain processes that feel like that's part of my personal peak performance package and what I put in for the business in the way we do things. And a personal touch, yet definitely some ease in there for us. And then when I'm communicating with customers, and literally that means being usually in front of them on a coaching call or a group call or a webinar, then I am wanting to show up and be as aligned as I can be. Do my darndest to be as aligned as I can be. Correct whatever needs to be corrected, just like you were talking about with your own self today. And if something is a little off, call it out and be able to speak up about that and know that if anything, my clients will respect me more for that and um, be more inspired by me and trust me more, because that's how I feel when my own colleagues and mentors show up and will just speak up about something instead of putting on the face that everything is perfectly aligned and they're, you know, all is just rosy today, like you did, like just sharing with the audience, hey, today's an interesting day. And here, so I think that plays into all of this, into how I show up with my clients and bring that peak performance, because I don't think that that is, peak performance does not equal perfection. And it's not being that perfect alignment, but it's being aware.
Yeah, 100%. And Charis has been amazing to work with as well. So she's seen me have my moments where I am far from being perfect and being vulnerable. And it does bring you closer to the people in your life when you're real with them. And it's funny, I'll have calls with people that are new people to my world, and they'll ask me, how are you doing? And I will tell them really how I am doing. And they're always shocked. And I'll say, It's a pretty good day, but X, Y, and Z is happening. So if I seem a little off, or Monday, right after I had that injection, I still had calls and I said, hey, if my face looks like upset or off, or my energy seems like not on the mark, it's because I'm actually in a lot of pain right now, not to the point where I can't help you, but I'm not 100% me today, just letting you know. And they're like, thank you so much for telling me that. But it does make a difference, and your customers, your employees, your colleagues, your mentors will appreciate you for it. And it's something that is really kind of disappearing from the world. So we need more safe containers to be who we are. On that note, we're going to switch and we're going to talk about revenue, because we are business owners, right? So I want to ask you, and this is, perfect transition. We were talking about vulnerability and authenticity, but when have you left money on the table and what did you do to fix it?
I actually had a moment recently that I think is an example. So I was offering three private coaching packages. And then I realized, like, why am I offering the lower one that I don't really want to do? For a couple reasons. One, less revenue. Two, less commitment from someone. Three, I can't make as big of an impact as I'd like because it is less hours. So it's like, so less results. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to drop that out for right now. I can always change it later if I so desire, or bring back a special for a period. But I just dropped it, and it just suddenly, I honored it as still as an option if I gave it to somebody else, obviously, when I did a follow up. But other than that, I was like totally fine with it. And I think that because I was realizing that what sparked it was someone was signing up and was about to go for the lesser package. But then I presented a program that I think this person would be a great fit for, is a private program, but I have a lot of things in my toolbox that I can do with clients. And this person would be best with some structure. So I said, well, I've got a program that I actually, based on everything you shared with me and your form and all this stuff, I think this specific program would be best for you. And it's a 12-session program. And so he says, well, I was thinking about doing this other package. And I said, he says, but I really like the sound of that. I agree with you. So then he went up, and that was when I was like, gosh, I mean, I'm glad I upsold on the call, but I also realized I could have left money on the table by having that lower package. And I don't really like the lower package. So I go, well, get rid of it. I get to choose.
Yeah.
Poof, magically it
Yeah.
was gone.
Yeah, and it feels good too, because I had a similar experience. I used to offer a lower tier package when I was just doing coaching and even with consulting. And I found that, one, the clients that I had didn't get as much ROI because it wasn't enough time together for them to actually put the foundational pieces in place to get the result. And so now what I do is I don't even have that smaller package, I don't even offer it. So at this point, because it's been a little bit longer than I think yours is more recent, I don't even offer it. If they ask for it, I'm like, if I offered it to you, you would be dissatisfied because it's not going to get you the results. I've been doing this a long time, so it's not even an option. So now I still have a product pyramid. So I have my different options for clients, but the lower tier one has them actually get results where they're getting more calls, they're getting leads, they're getting like the things into their world to practice their sales conversations and develop revenue. And then for the folks, that's for the folks that can afford consulting. And the ones that can afford consulting, I only sell them the package that I think is for them. I don't even tell them there are other options. I'm like, based on where you are today, this is what you need. And if they say, well, I can't afford that, great, let's look at some payment options for you. Not let's downsell you to a different program. Because if I'm going to downsell you to something that's not going to solve your problem, you're not going to be happy. And so then what's the point of working together? So, anyways, if you're listening to this, yeah, really pay attention to what feels like, what is your sweet spot that you sell? And then if you have something below that, why are you selling it? And if you need it to then kind of upsell people later, great, if it actually solves their problem. But otherwise, get rid of that thing. So, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
The next question I want to ask you is, what is the next shiny object that you would like to turn into a revenue stream?
So I have my program Busy to Balanced, and I learned all the things. Oh my God, all the things, the zillions of pieces of software and all the stuff to do the funnel, to do the automations, to do the amount of stuff I learned was phenomenal for setting that all up. And I'm grateful to that, and I love the program and I love the people in it, and I want to keep it going. And I am seeing an opportunity to do a different program for a different audience that are that I've been introduced to and working with this year, that are business owners at the end of their journey, exiting their business. And so I'm like, oh, this could be, I can see doing a specific program for them. So that's out there looming and kind of just swirling around. I also really want to do even I'm going to say bigger shiny object because it lights me up hugely to think about, and super shiny. I think when I think about the beauty of it is I really want to plan some retreats to Africa. I went there 9 years ago and it was an amazing experience. And I totally could see doing some retreats. And so that's like swirling around. And I'm just waiting to see the next step present itself, that I'm ready to do something to bring it to fruition.
What if you combined this new retirement exit
Yeah.
strategy group and brought them to Africa to plan it out in a space that's completely different so that they could do that and get away from the distractions and make sure that they exit in a more graceful way?
Yeah, you will. I'd already thought, I didn't think about part of what you just said, so thank you. I had definitely thought that I think it's the ideal audience for it because, that's a hefty price tag of a trip. And so, but people who have sold their business and have time and money or are about to, that could be really, really interesting. So, yes, it is right there, and we'll see when I'm ready to literally put it up on the shelf and say, here, here, buy
Yeah.
it.
There's also some fun, playful things you could do with that. It's like, they're in this exit strategy mode. So it's like exit your business, exit your life, in a way that
Yeah,
makes sense in a completely different country, in a place that's probably on their bucket list that
yep,
they've never been, with other people that are going through that same thing. I think it's a really powerful, compelling, shiny object. I think you're
yeah,
close to it, closer than you
yeah.
realize.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. And the referrals I've been getting into that new industry is I mean, literally three from a new contact in the last 2 weeks. And and they're all looking very promising. Some of them I haven't had full calls with yet. Anyway, there's a lot of momentum happening. Let's just put it that way. There's a lot of momentum, and I'm trusting it. I'm like, okay, let's see where this goes, because basically it's the busy to balance people that are further down the business journey. So it's a similar type of person. It's just at a different stage. And so I'm excited because it's been fun and I'm trusting it, and we'll see where it takes me. But I agree with you. I think it's closer than I
Yeah.
realize, closer than I realize.
It's like a busy to balanced exit strategy. I
Yep.
love it. Amazing. Well, this has been a great conversation. We're going to head into our wrapping it up questions. What is the best one piece of advice that you would share with others today?
Oh, learn how to trust yourself. And I mean, like, really trust yourself. Like, hear the whisper that pops up before all the voices in your head come to the table.
Yeah, ignore those highways that are not real
Yeah.
in the
Yep.
brain.
Yep.
All right. And what's the legacy you wish to leave behind?
I, so going back to grace and my name, and also my mom's very much on my mind because literally in a couple of weeks, at least at the time we're recording this, I'm not sure when it'll air, but on Thanksgiving, it'll be 10-year anniversary of when she passed. And when I was in hospice with her, the weeks leading up to that, I was there for almost a month with her, able to stay with her. It was really extraordinary experience. There was a pastor, minister of chaplain, I think that they're called in that place where we were. And I remember speaking with him in the hall, and he knew my name and mentioned that it was in the Bible a few times as well. And I said, yeah, I've been told that. And he says, he says, it means, his meaning was grace gift, which is beautiful. And so the concept of me being a grace gift, giving people grace in their lives is, and helping them give it to themselves is it brings tears to my eyes.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, so giving grace to others, it's a powerful legacy. And yeah, I'm so sorry for your loss and sending you big, big hugs. And thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing all of that with our listeners today. This has been a great, great conversation. Very, very real, very raw. For folks who really want to reach out to Charis and have them on their podcast, have her as a speaker, work with her, I'll have all of the links where you can reach her website, all of her social media contacts in the show notes, as well as in the YouTube link. So make sure you reach out to her and check out her podcast as well. With that, thank you so much, Charis.
Thanks, Holly.
Thank you for joining the show today. I hope you were inspired. More importantly, I hope you take action. If the show inspired you, I ask that you subscribe and share it with your network. Let's spread inspiration together today.